They think it's Russia. I have President Putin. He just said it's not Russia. I will say this. I don't see any reason why it would be. I will tell you that President Putin was extremely strong and powerful in his denial.
Really an embarrassing moment in American history, those comments in Helsinki getting even more attention now, that in the wake of the explosive reports about Russia that we detailed at the top of the program. It is just one example of President Trump shattering norms and siding with an American enemy over U.S. intelligence. In fact, people who follow this say they have never seen anything like this, and I believe that's putting it charitably. There was a piece in The Atlantic that I think spells it out nicely, and I want to read a quick portion of it. Donald Trump is a norm-busting president without parallel in American history. He's told scores of easily disprovable public lies. He's shifted back and forth and back again on his policies, often contradicting cabinet officials along the way. He's attacked the courts, the press, his predecessor, the intelligence community, alienated American allies, and even NATO. And he's monetized the presidency by linking it to his personal business interests, and he's engaged in cruel public behavior, and the list goes on and on. Well, joining me now to discuss this and much more, former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, a Democratic from Maine, who, as I said, led the Senate, also instrumental in negotiating a peace agreement in Northern Ireland, awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and appointed Middle East envoy by President Obama in 2009. The list goes on, frankly, too long for us to do here. But, Senator, if I told you the two most credible reporting agencies in this country have said that the FBI investigated our president for maybe being an asset for Russia, and that the president also had the interpreter destroy notes so there'd be no public record of a private conversation with Putin, not to even share with his own cabinet, you'd swear I'm talking Manchurian Candidate or something. Have you ever seen anything in the area code of the bizarre time in American history we are now?
Not within my memory. These are, of course, serious allegations, which are, and I'm certain, being investigated by the special counsel. But I think we have to withhold final judgment until the report is completed and submitted, and the president's lawyers have an opportunity to submit their responses. There have been a great deal of different stories emerging. The president himself, I think, has developed a skill at moving from one subject to another, and so it's been hard for people to focus on the larger picture. But I think that Mr. Mueller appears to be doing that, and at least publicly it's been reported that his completed report will be available in the next few months. So I think it's wise for Americans to make final judgments, really to withhold final judgments, until we see that report and we hear the president's response.
You know, about a month ago, 44 former senators, basically an equal number of Republican and Democrats, a lot of your former colleagues, put out a letter where they said, in no small part, that the Senate has long stood in defense of democracy and must again. They say, as former members of both parties, it's our shared view that we are entering a dangerous period. We feel an obligation to speak up about serious challenges to the rule of law, the Constitution, our governing institutions, and our national security. Former Presidents Bush's, including Bush 43, said that this president was stoking racism and falsehoods in this country. And you've had other outgoing Republicans who have also echoed real concern. But what's missing is sitting Republican senators saying, that's a line. He's crossed the line. He's gone too far, basically putting country above party. So it's a hypothetical, I grant you, but I'm putting you back into the Senate, and you're serving a Democratic president. If they did the things this president has done, would you have spoken out against that president if you thought he was tearing at the fabric of this nation and its national security?
I like to think I would have, but it's a lot easier to say from the safe vantage point of retirement than when you're right in the middle of the hurricane. One thing I learned in politics, Richard, is that there's no limit to the human capacity for rationalization. But I think the challenge will be coming when the special counsel Mueller issues his report. and the president and his attorneys make their response. Then I think there will be a real challenge for the conscience and the consequences for each person in the Congress, House and Senate, indeed for all Americans. I believe the fair and appropriate thing to do in judging the propriety of the president's actions in those areas under investigation is to wait until that report is completed, published. I'm deeply disturbed at public reports that the president and his allies may be seeking to suppress publication of the report or some part of it. It really has to become public. And to read and take into account the views expressed by the president's lawyers in response to that. And I think that's going to be a real challenge for every American, and particular for Republican elected officials.
I'd be remiss not to ask the guy who actually did the near impossible brokering peace in Northern Ireland. We have a government shutdown as we speak. Given the parameters, given how entrenched both sides are, and also how seemingly the president sees this as a good thing, and he said he took pride in the shutdown, at least at one point, how would you broker some kind of an agreement, whether it be a ceasefire, more weeks to sit back at the table? Is there a pathway to a deal here, or do you think this drags on? Are we going to be still in a strike, a shutdown, I should say, when we're talking about the State of the Union at the end of the month?
It's very difficult to solve a highly politicized and controversial issue when there's only one issue, wall or no wall. You then have a situation where inevitably there must be a winner and a loser, and nobody wants to be the loser. The question is, do you want a political victory over your opponents, or do you want a substantive victory over the issue that you're trying to deal with? It's inevitable in politics that you have both. But right now, the political desires of both sides to gain a political victory is completely overwhelming the desire on both sides to get a victory over the problem. I believe that the best way to proceed would be to permit all of the agencies of government other than Homeland Security to be funded and to go about their business, and then set a period, say 90 days, in which you could have a comprehensive debate on the issues involved in immigration. You can't solve them by either building a wall or not building a wall, but we can solve it in a way that I think is positive if we can at least get a focus on a broader approach to the whole issue rather than focusing on a single element of it.
And coming up next, we will go around the world, if you will, with Senator Mitchell. We'll also take a look at the hot spots and the president's handling of them.